Not mashal. Okay, it makes sense. Mashal also. अच्छा री. So Newton's first law हमने पढ़ लिया. We studied के we wanted let's say inertia as a property which we measured over here, right? So what happens ke it basically said ke let's imagine if you're sitting at your seats or sofa or let's say any cushion, okay, you're sitting on the ground also, you're stationary right now, right? So your body would basically try to maintain the state of rest. If I want to push you off, let's say if you have a kid, if you have a let's say a brother or a sister, right, who is teasing you right now, they would push you off, right? If they push you off, your let's imagine you have a lesser mass like Anas, right? This experiment over here. So you would be easily be toppling down either to your left or to your right or to the front or to the back, right? But if you have a let's say an elephant, right, which we saw, so it won't basically be moving, right? So inertia की property and mass relation ऐसे होता है. So what does the Newton first law said in a summary? कि अगर object is at rest, it would try to remain at rest, and object at constant motion will try to move with constant motion until a force acts on it to change its state. That is the summary of Newton's first law. अच्छा जी, अब हमने ये पढ़ लिया. अब we are gonna relate force and acceleration, right? ठीक है, अब ये लर्न किए, हाँ, कि अगर हमने पढ़ ली कि व्हाट आर द स्टेट्स दैट आर रिक्वायर्ड फॉर causing a change in state, right? Let's say if you are at rest, how can I make you walk? How can I make you basically, let's say, run? If you are at constant motion, how can I basically stop you, right? So for starting a motion or for stopping a motion, you need a force. Does that point make sense? So that is the Newton's first law. So for initiating any motion or stopping any motion, you would have to apply an opposing force or a starting force to basically start or stop the motion. Achari. Newton's second law basically talks about if your motion is actually happening, right? Let's say if the body is moving, how does the force that is applied on the object relates with mass and acceleration, right? Imagine this. You have a box over here, box A, and this is Mashal, right? Now Mashal is applying a constant force on this block, and the block is moving with constant acceleration, right? And this block has a constant mass that is equals to m, right? So just imagine this scenario. अब हमारे पास motion हो रहा है, the motion is happening. So we are gonna relate how is the force varying with the acceleration, right? ठीक है? That is the Newton's second law, right? So what does it say? It states the following. Let's talk about a definition of Newton's second law. Then we'll derive the formula. Can anyone tell me the definition of Newton's second law? Definition क्या होती है? What is the definition of Newton's second law? Yes, Vardha. What is the Newton's second law?
Yeah, force equals to नहीं force की definition ना sorry
Definition, not the formula.
जी इसकी definition नहीं आती.
Anyone else?
Sir, can I tell?
Yeah, sure.
So, force is directly proportional to acceleration. So, when force is applied on an object, the object accelerates in the direction of force. If the force is more,
Good.
the object will accelerate more, and if the force is less, the object will accelerate less.
Good. Perfect. Perfect. ठीक है. So let me just break down the definition into steps, right? ताकि it's easier to remember what is the definition. Imagine this block A. It has a mass m, right? So if you apply a force of F newtons, right, on a mass, on a block of mass m kg, right? So what would happen? An acceleration, an acceleration would result as a product, ठीक है, with the direction aligned with that of the force F, right? So up, what is it saying? It's saying as following, right? If you apply a force F on an object of mass m, so an acceleration takes place, ठीक है, which is in the same direction as of the force. You can see कि force का direction हमारे पास यही है and acceleration direction हमारे पास same है. So these both vectors are parallel to each other. ठीक है, this is pretty important over here, right? So this is your Newton's second law of motion. ठीक है. So how do I define it? Basically, formula wise, it is as follows. We basically came to a conclusion over here. Okay, if you apply the greater the force, the greater the acceleration, right? So the force and acceleration is highly proportional to each other. That is one relation. And we have seen another relation from the mass, that is, so greater the mass, lesser the acceleration. ठीक है? So if I try to link these two formulas, if I sketch them out, let's imagine this is your force F over here, it is in newtons, and this is your acceleration, which is a meter per second square. If I plot it out on a graph, this would be a straight line. That says that it is directly proportional to each other, right? So if the force increases, the acceleration would increase. If the force decreases, the acceleration would also decrease. Okay? That is what a direct proportional is. Okay? Now we have seen inertia, right? So the greater the mass, it is difficult to move it, right? The smaller the mass, the easier to move it, right? Which we have seen from elephant and another example, right? So this thing is basically inversely linked to another. अच्छा, यहाँ पे हमारे पास मास है ये. So mass is independent quantity, so it comes on x-axis, and acceleration is dependent upon mass, so it comes on y-axis, right? This is pretty important over here. So this is an inverse relation like this, right? So how do you read this graph? If you increase the mass, you can see that the acceleration is decreasing, right? And if you decrease the mass, you can see that the acceleration is going to increase. Okay, that is an inverse relation. So if I combine these two formulas, I get the following relation, that F is proportional to MA, right? Does that make sense? So if I just analyze these two things, if I just think, let's say acceleration हमारे पास नहीं है, it is not here. So this is stating कि force is proportional to mass. ठीक है? If I analyze the effect of what? If I analyze the effect of acceleration and mass, ठीक है? Let's imagine हमारे पास force is equals to 1, right? It's not there, it's just 1, right? So that will give you the acceleration is inversely proportional to mass. ठीक है? So both the conditions are getting satisfied over here. ठीक है? So we have now this relation over here. ठीक है? So if I remove the sign of proportionality, I will have a constant, right? So therefore I have F equals to K M A, right? Which you can see over here. So first of all, we had this relation over here, right? Achari. So now we did experiments. Physicists basically did some experiments and they came to a conclusion, okay, for a force of 1 Newton, right? You would have to apply the force of 1 kilogram, sorry, 1 Newton on a mass of 1 kg. And the acceleration produced is also equals to what? 1 meter per second square, right? So if you put in the values in this equation, you get 1 equals to K times 1 times 1, right? So what does K comes out to be? K comes out to be 1, right? So you can put this value of K over here into this formula to get your final formula. And therefore you had the following relation. So we had this F is equals to K constant times mass times acceleration. Since we came to a conclusion from experiments, हमारे पास K is coming out to be 1. Therefore, the Newton's second law comes out to be as follows. That F is equals to mass times acceleration. Right? So this is your Newton's second law of derivation. ठीक है? Just give me a thumbs up if it is clear to everyone, the definition and the derivation. Okay, it's clear to Ruba, it's clear to Mashar, it's clear to Rayan, Hamza. What about me? It's clear to Azan. It's Azan, not Anas. Sorry, I thought it's Anas. Maeve, it is clear or not?
I didn't get it.
Can you speak loudly?
I didn't get it.
You didn't get it? What part?
No. Yeah, this part.
Can you speak loudly and just identify sir, step number 3, step number 4, which was not clear?
Second one.
I'm not able to hear you.
Second one.
Second part. Okay. Huh.
Yeah.
So for the second part, just see this experiment, right? So this was mass 2. This was mass 1, right? Okay. So let's imagine we are applying a constant force on both of them. Okay. My force is constant, right? It is constant. Let's make it to a value of, let's say, 50 newtons. It's constant. It's not changing, right? So at this force, okay, obviously when I apply the force, the body should also accelerate, right? This is by from Newton's second law, right? So if you just compare, this relation, right? You compare this relation of acceleration and mass. Okay, so I was just saying, yeah, let me just get to the last point. So can anyone tell me which object is easier to move? Anas, right? Anas is easier to move. So which acceleration would be greater? So obviously acceleration of Anas would be greater than acceleration of elephant, right? So now, however, Anas had a smaller mass, right? So smaller the mass, greater the acceleration. Bigger the mass, smaller the acceleration, right? So it is an inverse relation, right? You can see over here, okay? The mass of elephant and the mass of Anas, okay? Now, if you relate this, mass of Anas was lesser than mass of elephant, right? So if we relate these two equations, we will see it is an inverse relation. That is why we came to this result from Newton's first law, that mass is inversely proportional to acceleration. Then we combined these formulas into a single equation, and we got this particular thing. It should have a constant k, but through experiments, the k came out to be 1. Therefore, you have this equation F equals to ma. Right? So now I would request you guys to just take out the calculators, your pencil, and some of your attention. Okay, so this is just a definition over here. Newton's second law is what? K, it is mass times acceleration. So if you try to link, usually you have plot of force against extension or force against acceleration. ठीक है? So आपको एक graph दिए होंगे. उससे you can predict the mass होता है, right? If I want to sketch the force and acceleration graph, so that would look like as follows. So you have force over here, that is in newtons. You have acceleration over here, that is in meter per second square. So it would be a straight line passing through the origin, right? So if you find the slope of this graph, what would you get? This is change in y, that is equal to change in m, change in a, and this is change in x, that is equal to change in f. So if you just see the formula, what formula do you have? You have f equals to ma. So if you try to relate, if you try to make m subject, you get k m is equals to force upon acceleration, right? But from this graph, your slope is coming out to be what? It's coming out to be change in acceleration upon change in force. So is it equal? Is it equivalent to mass, or is it equivalent to reciprocal of mass? Can anyone tell me how can I relate this thing with the mass? How can I relate this thing with the mass? Just compare the formulas, and what are you getting from on the right side? Yes. Anyone? Azan?
सर रेसिप्रोकल मिल रहा है.
Reciprocal मिल रहा है ना? So if you see, okay, you are getting delta A over delta F. So that will give you 1 over mass, right? So if you rearrange the formula, if you do cross multiplication, you get the following thing. Okay, mass time delta acceleration equals to delta F, right? So अब ये formula map हो रहा है इसके ऊपर, right? So when you find the slope of acceleration against force, you get the slope, ठीक है? So that is equal to the reciprocal of mass, ठीक है? So अभी keeping this in mind, start solving this question. I'm gonna give you guys 3 minutes to solve. We have 3 minutes to solve this question. So what are you giving over here? You are given the following things. Just compare things what are given over here. You're given this. So given the mass of an object is 2 kg and the force that is applied on the mass is 5 newtons. Okay, this is F1 and your F2 is given to be as 9 newtons, right? In the part A, you want to find what is the resulting force. And in the part B, you want to find the acceleration, right? So think about this is your block M that has mass of 2 kg and okay, so this is basically is having constant force F1, that is 5 newtons. And after certain, let's say point B, the force is increased to 9 newtons. Go to find the resultant force, right? And then find the acceleration. Solve it out. You have 3 minutes.
So for the resultant force, I have 4 newtons, and for the acceleration, I have 2 meter per second square.
Good. Right? I believe that everyone is getting the same answers. If your answers are matching, give me a thumbs up. If your answers are matching with Mashal's answers, give me a thumbs up. Okay, good. Good. That's good. That's good. Okay. So yeah, let's solve it out. Let's solve it out and it should give you a great idea. And for part A, so what is happening over here? You have the block A. Okay, let's this is point A, and the block is going towards point B, right? So initially it had a force of F1, right? That was 5 newtons. And the force will increase to एकदम से force में increment किया of to 9 newtons. Obviously, this increment would lead to acceleration, right, of the object. So we want to first of all find what is the resultant force with which the object basically is moving with now, and at the corresponding resultant force, what is the acceleration, right? So we want to find these two things. So what is going to be the resultant force? It is going to be the change in force, right? That is going to be F2 minus F1. So that is going to be 9 minus 5. Therefore, the resultant force is coming out to be 4 newtons. Okay? And I hope it is same, right? And for part B, you need to find acceleration. So for acceleration, we have Newton's second law of motion, that is F equals to ma, right? We want to find acceleration, it becomes F upon m. And you know the mass of the object, that is 2 kg, right? Just put in the values. This is going to be resultant force, right? So that is the force that caused the acceleration, right? So going to be 4 upon 2. Therefore, you have 2 meter per second, right? So these are your answers. I hope everyone is getting the same answer, right?